All right, so let's talk about World War One on the home front. Okay, here in America, how does World War One impact America? So while the war is going on, what's actually taking place in America? So we're going to define some terms: home front, total war, Wilson's wartime effort. Like, what is he trying to do? What's a Liberty Bond? What is the Espionage and Sedition Acts? What is this Shank versus the United States? It's the Red Scare, the Palmer Raids, xenophobia, that's how you say that X word, and a radical, and then the Great Migration. So let's go ahead and dive in. So, some terms to know before we get involved. When we talk about the home front, we're talking about how the war affects the home or that home country. So, how does it affect the United States? So, when we say the war on the home front, we're talking about what's going on in the United States during World War One. Now, World War One is called the Great War or the war to end all wars. It's also known as a total war. And a total war is when a country mobilizes everything, all of its resources in order to win that war. And that's basically what happens during World War One. The United States mobilizes everything to make sure, economic, industrial, and social resources, political resources, they're getting everything and everybody involved in this war effort. And other countries do the same: France, England, Russia, etc. So Wilson has a plan in this wartime effort, and his plan is to make sure that the whole country gets involved. And he creates a series of groups, some of and a series of items, and some of those things I have listed here. One of them is what's known as the War Industries Board, which is just to make sure that the labor and management to keep factories making war-related materials like arms, uniforms, stuff like that. So Wilson is going to get these factories to make other products that benefit the war effort. That's part of this sort of total war idea. Also, the country needs food, and so do the troops fighting in Europe. So he's going to create what's known as the Food Administration, which is going to ensure and make sure that there's enough food being produced and harvested and manufactured for the troops and for the home front, for us at home, right? Also, very importantly, so make sure you know what this is, Wilson and Congress create something called a Liberty Bond. Okay. And a Liberty Bond was basically a way for the United States to pay for the war effort. It's essentially a loan, and U.S. citizens would buy these bonds, which would basically just be sheets of paper, right? And saying that the United States, the Liberty Bond, there would be a series of them passed, three of them, in fact, these Liberty Bond Acts. And so basically, it said they would come in $50 or $100,000 loans. Okay, so depending on if you were rich or poor, you could help pay and do your duty as a citizen to pay for the war effort. And so basically, what happens is if I go and buy a Liberty Bond, let's say I'm not super rich, I'm going to go buy a $50 Liberty Bond. The United States is agreeing to pay it back in full with interest, like 3, 4, 5% interest added to it. So if I go buy a bond for $50, I know I'm probably going to get back my money plus then some after the war is over. The U.S. didn't always succeed in paying back everything they said they would do. But anyway, that's not here nor there. So essentially, Wilson's goal is he's trying to mobilize everything and get everyone involved in this effort. And so what we see is this increase in patriotism, and that by getting involved, whether joining the military or working at home, everything was doing your part, and it made you feel like you were part of the war. That's what Wilson was trying to do at home. He's trying to make sure that even the average citizen, even the kid, feels like they're fighting the war too, as we see in some of these political cartoons here. So everyone's getting involved. See, do your duty, buy a Liberty loan, buy a Liberty bond, right? So this is tailored specifically to immigrants. Remember your first thrill of American liberty, people coming to the United States. Well, if you're thrilled about it and you're happy about it, do your duty and buy a Liberty bond. Join this war effort. Be patriotic. Be American. Another way is pictured here is that women were also involved in the work to get this war fought, especially African American women and men as well. Everyone was supposed to get involved and fight this war. It is a total war effort. Everyone has to go and do their part to do something to help America win this war. So it meant that some would be nurses, some would be working in factories, some would be making gas masks, Some would be working in the American Red Cross. Some would be making military materials. Some would even be working and fighting in the war. Some would be working in telegraphs, and some would be working in the U.S. Post Office, doing all sorts of work to make sure America wins this war. That's Wilson's goal. But there's not unified agreement in this mobilization, this total war effort. There's people who say that it's not a good thing. And this is where we get to opposition. The people who said it was a bad thing were very vocal about it. And during this time, when you were vocal and during a war of this magnitude, people saw opposition talk as something bad. You're a traitor, you're a non patriot. So Congress is going to pass two laws. In 1917, we have the Espionage Act, and in 1918, we have the Sedition Act. Those two laws together made it a crime to oppose the war, meaning to say you don't like it, or to say anything disloyal about the war effort. Okay, so let me just make this clear. These two laws made it to where you couldn't say anything negative, and if you did, it could be misconstrued as you being somehow a traitor or a spy. So let's talk about that for a moment. Here's some people protesting these two laws and people who had been arrested. Tons of people would be arrested, many of them immigrants, labor union leaders, and stuff like that, for violating the Espionage Act and the Sedition Act. One of them is a man named Charles Schenck. Okay, so Charles Schenck was a socialist, meaning that he believed that the government should work to provide social means and social networks and social safety nets for the U.S. citizens. Okay, when I say socialism, Charles Schenck is not like Adolf Hitler. That's totalitarian dictatorship. Socialism at its base is that the government should do something to help the people. And there's a lot of variations there, but not to get muddy the waters. But just Charles Schenck is a socialist, and he was already on the watch list of America. But he and his buddies get upset about this draft that in this enlistment process to try to build up the war effort. And this is a political cartoon from England, but the U.S. did it too. Here we have a magazine cover where an American woman is presenting her son. And so on June 5th, 1917, there was a call for all males between 21 and 30 to join the war effort. Okay, you had to go and sign up to take part in the war. It was your duty. It's patriotic. I mean, look, here's my boy. He's going to go be a man. He's going to go fight in the war. He's going to do something good, right? Charles Schenck and his buddies are not happy about that. And they go so far as to create pamphlets that they disseminate around the country. Pamphlets that basically say that this enlistment effort, this registration, this draft is violating the 13th Amendment and putting men in slavery. Well, this is after the Sedition Act and Espionage Act have been passed. And so Charles Schenck and his buddies are going to get arrested. And he's going to try to appeal to the Supreme Court saying that this is this violation is a violation of his 13th Amendment. Well, it goes all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court is going to rule that his actions were a clear and present danger to the security of the United States. He was arguing that by creating this pamphlet, he's just trying to use his effort of free speech and say that this is a violation of the Constitution. So Schenck and his buddies are going to say that we were using our free speech, and by being arrested, he was having his First Amendment right being violated. Well, the Supreme Court is going to say no. In this situation, when your speech is a clear and present danger, it violates the Espionage Act, and your speech is not free. So the basic argument of the Schenck versus United States that you need to know is that if your speech presents a, quote, clear and present danger, unquote, to the country, then it is constitutional for you to be silenced. It basically said that some forms of speech is not free. And that's why this Supreme Court case is so important. Okay, so make sure you know this, that in Schenck versus the United States, it set the precedent that speech can be restricted if it presents a clear and present danger.